So we did a little law of demand last time. So we're going to wrap up chapter 3 today. Looks like I think all of you had success, maybe one exception on getting the test in. So if you get, just kind of FYI, if all of a sudden your screen blanks out, you'll have to get with me later. So this happened only to one person. It doesn't happen very often, so you'll probably go through most of the semester without this happening. But if you have some sort of computer problem or something, then just shoot me an email. So.
Like, my Apple won't work the program right. I have to use somebody's computer.
Your Apple's not working it right? And what browser in Apple? Are you doing Safari? You might want to check. I can't remember what this if it's supposed to work okay with it. How many other Apple users do we got? What are you using? Firefox? Google Chrome? So yeah, try switching browsers out of Safari, and some of the stuff that they use I don't think plays nicely with it. So. Okay, anything else? All right, let's see, let me get this circulating around. Here's the sign-in sheet again. Make sure that circulates to everybody. So we did the law of demand, and how did that work again, the law of demand? No, the law of demand specifically. What is the law of demand? Price goes up. Demand goes down. More. Yeah, ceteris paribus. That's right. You did good. In fact, I think I got to give you an extra credit point just for taking a good stab at it. So yeah. So ceteris paribus. Yeah. Oh, now we're going crazy. Bunch of that. All right, give me your name again. Sorry. Whitaker. All right, so yeah, ceteris paribus. Now, that definition was actually not quite right, so I do want to polish that a little bit more. Price goes up. What goes down? Not demand, quantity demanded. So remember what space we're living in? I talked about the realms of space. Well, when we're out here in two-dimensional space, and we have that connection of dots, that is demand, or the demand curve. So if we were being real proper, we might always refer to it as the demand curve. And that always has the two dimensions to it. And so what the law of demand is a relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. So if the price is P1 and the quantity is Q1. The price is P2, the quantity is Q2. It's something different, right? A new quantity, a higher quantity when the price is dropped. Ceteris paribus, holding all the things constant, those things end up being our demand shifters. Those things were what?
Taste of preferences.
Taste of preferences. Somebody else, that's 1. Income, good, that's 2. Expectations, good, that's 3. Price-related goods, that's 4. Nope. Substitutes, complements are related to price of related goods. Under that category, goods can be substitutes or complements. So we're missing 1. Population, good. So the number of consumers, just kind of sheer head count. So you should have that list memorized. Those 5 things, those are kind of important to remember. The one noticeable thing that's not on the shifter list is the price. The price is so important that we measure it on the vertical axis. That variable is still there, the variable of price, just like income, but it's here on the axis. Therefore, when it changes, it leads to a change in the quantity demanded. It doesn't lead to a change in demand, i.e. a shift of demand, because the demand curve's right there, ceteris paribus. If you drop the price, people buy more. If you increase the price, people buy less. That's the law of demand. All right, now, we could measure income on the horizontal or on the vertical axis. I want to be careful with this one because we don't use it, but I'm going to show it to show a point of how the shifter business works. If I measure income here, and this is $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 worth of income, we could observe how much people buy. Now, as income goes up, what happens to purchases of a normal good? Do they go up or down? They go up, right? So there was a positive relationship between income. I have more money, I buy more stuff. So that's a normal good. That's the normal relationship. And so if I was to graph that out, would that be an upward sloping or downward sloping line on this space? Upward sloping, because I got income here. Income's going up and I'm going to buy more crap, right? So there we go. We go boom, boom, boom. At 10 it's this, at 20 it's this, at 30 it's this. And so we have an upward sloping relationship. But that relationship's not true unless ceteris paribus again. Ceteris paribus like what? Holding things constant like what?
Everybody keeps the same income for their whole life?
No, here we're talking at a slice in time here of their income today. So at $10,000, I want to buy this much. At $30,000, I want to buy this much. Holding constant, what sort of things? Prices of related goods, preferences, population, now you're getting it. And then there's one other one that would be a shifter on this list. What else are we holding constant? The price. Let's put some meat on the bones here. What good are we talking about? Give me a good, any good, any good, any good? Ramen. So the good is ramen, even though ramen's... I don't want to use ramen just because it's normally an inferior good, and I don't want to confuse you. So give me a normal good. What do you buy more of? Steak. All right, let's go with steak. So we got a nice ribeye steak here. What else are we holding constant? The price of related goods, you said. So we're holding the price of chicken constant, and the price of pork ribs, right? Pork shoulder and other things that we might use as a substitute for steak. What else are we holding constant? As my income goes up, I buy more steak. Holding constant the price of steak, right? So now along this curve, I might be holding the price of the ribeye steak at $9 a pound. I have to hold something constant in order to draw the relationship for this one variable, income versus steak. And I get this, what we call an Engel curve. I think it might be talked about in your chapter, but we don't spend a lot of time on it. But there's a positive relationship here. My income goes up, I buy more steak. There it is, holding other things constant, because I might turn out to buy less steak. In other words, this income curve might shift here. At $20,000, I used to buy this much steak. What would cause me to buy less steak, even though I'm still making $20,000? The price goes up, right? And so if the price of steak goes up to $15 a pound, at $30,000, I used to want to buy a lot of steak, now I want to buy less. At $10,000, I used to want to buy this much steak, but now I want to buy less. Because at a price of $15 a pound, I'm going to buy less no matter what my income is. And it relocates the curve. Okay? So that's how these shifter things work. The one that we're going to spend the most time on in this chapter and subsequent chapters is the demand curve. We're going to be in this space called the demand curve space, where we're measuring the price of the good itself and the quantity sold of that good. Okay? All right, questions there? All right, so let's build on to our little beer model we got going. So let's see, we had the price at 12. You might want to rewrite these numbers. I don't know how you left it on your page, but you may or may not be able to add on, but it might be safer to just put them up here again, because I'm going to add more data this time. So the quantity demanded of beer, we had 160, 200, 240, 280, and then 320. And then we graphed it out and everything was great. Now, I want to bring in the liquor stores. And the grocery stores and look at the quantity supplied of beer. At higher prices, are suppliers willing to supply more or less? If prices are high, sale prices, remember, prices that they can get for a case of beer or a 12-pack, if those are higher, are they willing to supply more or they don't want to supply as much? They want to supply more. So you want to be careful. Sometimes what's hard in principles class is we start to use cost and price as one and the same. Because you guys often say, well, what'd it cost you? Oh, I went to the cafeteria today and I got a couple extra desserts. Well, what'd it cost you? Well, the proper way in this class would be, well, what was the price of that object? We wouldn't say it like that. Economists are way too cool to say it that proper. But what was the price of the thing, right? You see what I'm saying? So we got to be careful about cost and price, and then also be thinking about what hat we're wearing, because producers hopefully buy something at a lower cost than they end up selling it for. Sometimes they don't, though, right? And they lose money on it. But hopefully the sale price of their product is higher than the cost they paid for it. What we're looking at here in the market is saying, in general, holding all other things constant, if the price of 12-packs are going up, the producer would be willing and able to supply more of those. And that's the law of supply. So I'm going to motivate that here with our schedule goggles and say that at $12, the suppliers are willing to bring 320 12-packs to the market. At $10, they're going to cut back to 280. So as the price is falling, it's less lucrative for them to bring product to the market. And so they're going to adjust the quantity on their shelves. So at $8, $240, at $6, $200, and at $4, $160. So what we've highlighted is another law, the law of supply. And that is simply kind of the opposite of the law of demand. As the price increases, the quantity supplied, QS, the quantity supplied, and maybe I should be a little more careful and write that out the first time. The quantity supplied, I smack myself in my face. The quantity supplied increases. Ceteris paribus. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Ceteris paribus, holding all of the things constant. Price goes up, the quantity supplied will also go up. The law of demand, or law of supply. All right, so let's graph this out, both the supply and the demand. So again, if you're kind of working from your old numbers, then you can add those on. If you start it over, then you can kind of work it this way. So we had quantities at 160, 200, 240, 280, 320. Again, I recommend that you just kind of do nice even spacing to make your graphs look somewhat pretty here between 160 and 320. And then we've got prices climbing to 12. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then plot those points. Should get something looking like this. You can go ahead and connect the points if you want. And we got ourselves a good old-fashioned supply and demand curve. All right. So, where are we going to end up? What's your prediction of what the price is going to be? $8. So kind of X marks the spot, right? So even just looking at this, if we probably put it in front of a third grader or something, they'd probably point to the X and say, well, something's going on there, right? There's an interaction of something right at that spot. And so that turns out to be our equilibrium spot, a situation where there's no tendency for change. So why do we expect to be there is kind of more interesting. So it's kind of one thing to say X marks the spot and that's equilibrium price, but what is the human behavior going on behind the scenes? You know, what is bringing us to that and making that prediction? So one way to think about it is to say, suppose it's not there. Let's just tell a story like, let's suppose that we're at $12. Tell me what's going on in terms of human behavior if the price happened to be $12. What's that? Okay, so the producer's putting 320 12-packs on the shelf, right? And how many do people want to buy? 160. So what does that cause to happen? What does the business owner start thinking to themselves? They're losing money, they've got excess inventory, and what might they do tomorrow? Lower the price, right? So there's an incentive there to get the product sold. It is what we call a surplus, is the fancy word that we put on here. So at a price of $12, there is a surplus of, and we can be precise with the number of units here. We've got how many 12 packs unsold? 160. So we've got a surplus of 160 at a price of 12. This acts as a signal to the business owner who is in the business to try to sell the product, right? And so they run a sale. So they drop their price to $4. Okay? All right, so what does that mean in real terms? Talk to me in terms of the business owner who, by the way, very likely didn't have one single economics class. So I'm trying to think about real life here. You own a liquor store. You drop the price to 4. You're like, oops, 12 sucked. I got way too much inventory. Let's have a sale. $4.
People are wanting more than you have.
Okay, people are wanting more than you have. How do you know that? You're running a small business. How do you know that?
They're running out.
It's gone in like the first 4 days or very quickly, right? So if we tell a story of opening for business hours from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., right? So we drop our price to 4, and by noon, we're sold out. That, again, acts as a signal, right? It's too early. I can't call my distributor and get more to stock my shelves. I just had kind of undershot my price. It probably means that I could have had a higher price and sold that inventory and made a little bit more money. So that is a shortage. So at $4, we have a shortage of 160 units. So again, the business owner opens the door, raises the price to 10. Kind of telling a dynamic story now. At a price of 10, what's going on? Slight decrease of the surplus, right? So they put 280 on the shelves, 200 are sold, we're still left with 80, which signals to the business that their prices are a little too high. We don't want to have inventory. We want to have nice inventory turnover. All right, so they cut their price to 6. What's going on here? Shortage again. Now, I've spent all this time kind of talking about the producer. Is there incentive on the consumer side to see prices higher than 6? given that there's a shortage. Consumers like low prices, right? Isn't that what the law of demand kind of tells us? At low prices, they'll buy a whole bunch more. So is this all producer driven, or is there consumer incentive? Is there incentive on the consumer side to do that as well? Yes?
I think that it's also on the consumer side, because otherwise inventory would compete too fast.
Okay.
And there would be these people would afford it. That's what you make for make money in the department. You can when it's on sale.
Okay.
So having a higher price helps evenly distribute the.
All right. Anybody else want to add to that? I agree with what you're saying there.
I could use the same beer analogy. For example, when seasonal beers come out.
Okay.
You know, as a consumer, I wish that they would raise the price of the seasonal beer so that more would stay in stock and they wouldn't sell out so fast.
Okay. Okay. How about in the context of our little story here of opening up at 10 a.m. and now that they raised the price a little bit, we're up to maybe stock runs out at 3 p.m. Yes, Alyssa?
Well, it's kind of going the other way, saying it would be frustrating as a consumer to buy something for $10 and then going back later and see that it's $8
Okay. I want to deal more with, I think there is some human behavior stuff where if the price is too erratic, you might not like that because you might like a little more stability. Although everybody likes getting a deal. So what I'm thinking here is that when prices are low, who has incentive to see prices higher? Who has incentive besides on the consumer side? Is there any consumers that would rather have the price actually higher?
Oh, high income.
No.
There's more for them.
People who own stock in the company.
They're the owners. They'd be falling more on the supply side. How about the consumers? So let me package this a little differently. It's Friday, and you've got a party tonight, right? You've got a party tonight, and you work until 4, and the liquor store's having this sale, and you can't get there before 4, and you don't have any friends to come help get the product. What might you do if you're a savvy consumer, knowing that the price is 6 and knowing that you're screwed and your party's going to be beerless tonight if you don't get there? What might you do to try to make sure that you get your beer for your party? Offer them a little bit more, right? Come up with a creative way. Maybe call up the manager and say, hey, listen, I know you guys are having that sale for $6. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $2 more per 12 pack if you just set some aside in the back room for me, right? Give them a little incentive to put it in the bag. So there's incentive on the consumer side of the people who aren't going to get the product, right? That's what the impact of the shortage is here, is that there's going to be some people that go without. Those people who come early in the day, yeah, they get the great price, but there's a whole bunch of other people that get kind of shafted. And so they would have incentive to push the price up, which is kind of different, right? Where they're actually bidding the price up. Americans especially don't think this way, that we go to the store, there's the price, we pay the price if we want it. If we don't, we walk out of the store with nothing. We don't think to say, hey, would you take a little bit less? Or, hey, would you take a little bit more? I need it bad or whatever. I need this stuff to get here and kind of negotiate it. But that's what would really be going on. That would be what Adam Smith would call the invisible hand of the market, kind of guiding prices up towards this special point of equilibrium. At equilibrium, look at what happens. The quantity that's put on the shelf is just equal to the quantity that people want to buy. Both sides are happy. Neither side has incentive to kind of change the situation. The seller is savvy enough, well, I tried last week to get more price. Yeah, I'd love to get more price, but if I'm not going to sell the product, that's kind of dumb, right? So the seller is happy to find that equilibrium so that they don't have excess inventory. And the consumer has found a nice spot where all the consumers that want to buy the good get the good. And they have no incentive to bid up the price or talk down the price because they know that that is the market clearing price. So we call this the equilibrium price for good reason. It's the price that clears the market. There's no shortage, no surplus. What's being offered is what gets sold. All right, so let's write that down. So, equilibrium. I want to first of all put my general definition of equilibrium. A situation in which there is, not in, where there is no tendency for change. So then we apply that concept of equilibrium in a number of different ways. One of those ways is equilibrium price. So P star, equilibrium price, is the price where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. The market is cleared, everybody's happy, nobody has incentive to change from that price. Equilibrium quantity is the quantity where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. In other words, we kind of abbreviate it is what we do. So at this point here, 240 is the quantity demanded. It's also the quantity supplied. So for shorthand, we're just going to put Q star. It's the equilibrium quantity. So in this market, we'd expect there to be a price of 8 would be our prediction, P star of 8, and a quantity of 240. All right, questions on that at all? Do prices ever change? So economists are sometimes criticized because, well, you say price is going to be $8, but come on, look at the market. The price changes all the time. What's the proper economic response to that? Why is the price changing? Other factors. Good. The most of you guys, some of you were saying the right thing, but some other factor changed. That's right. So why did price change? It's because income changed. Incomes went up, and now if income goes up, we move to a higher price of $10 and $2.80, right? So these other factors are indeed changing. The economic model holds them constant, but the variability of those things changing is what's going to cause the price to fluctuate. Natural disasters, expectations, price of related goods, all that stuff. All right, questions on that? All right, so we listed the demand shifters yesterday and reiterated them today. So what is on the supply list? So the next thing I want to look at is supply shifters. Supply shifters. What are some things that would cause the business to change their mind? So kind of going back to that logic here, this is almost like a survey, remember? Holding other things constant. If you could get $12 for your 12-pack, how much would you put on the shelves? Boom, that much. If you could get $10, how much would you put on? Boom, that much, ceteris paribus. $8, that much. $6, that much. Now what we're thinking about is what would cause them to put less or more. In other words, at $12, I used to want to do this much, but now I'm going to cut back. Because why? What happened that caused me to change the quantity I want to supply at each price? Resources. Okay, what about them? Availability, a lack of resources. Now this is kind of jumping the gun. You guys aren't quite on the shifter, but it's related to resources. Let me see if I can milk this out of you. If there's a lack of resources, if resources are in short supply, again, I'm almost using this model to do this, what happens to the price of those resources? They go up. And that's our shifter, is the price of those resources. Not the quantity, but the price of resources.
So would that fall under like price reduction, price efficiency, stuff like that?
Could be, yes, could be any of that. Yep. So the price of resources, the number one thing I'll put on here would be wage. If there's an increase in wages, whether that's minimum wage law or something like that. So if the money that you're paying your laborers, if there's an increase in wages, that'll lead to an increase in supply or a decrease? Increase, decrease. I'm hearing a couple here. Decrease. So at $12 for my 12 pack, I used to want to supply this much, but now that I got to pay double to my employees, am I able to supply more or less? Less.
Are they working more for the wage or?
Holding all of the things constant, you got to pay them more. If they're putting in an 8-hour shift, they were making $10 an hour, now they're making $15 an hour, right? My cost of producing that 320 units went up. So an increase in wages leads to a decrease in the supply, which I want you to think about as a shift to the left. We did this last time with demand. If I shift this thing to the left, the golf club kind of looks like it actually went up, right? But I don't want you to think about it that way, because that would confuse you with the demand curve going up. Looks like it goes up, but it actually went to the right. So an increase in demand and an increase in supply. An increase in supply would look like a shift down. So to be consistent, just always think left and right. So that would cause a shift to the left of the supply curve. Just to add another one, you mentioned one, an increase in the transportation costs. So the price of transportation, that would lead to a decrease in supply. I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, so that could be a loaded one. For this one, that would be a decrease possibly. So if you found a perfect substitute for something else and it happened to be cheaper, you're effectively decreasing the price of that resource. Maybe you just switch brands. Like you need paper to build whatever you're building, and now you switch to a substitute product, which might be just another brand of paper, and you lowered your price. So again, that would kind of fall under the price of resources. Now there's other ways we can kind of devise that, but it all kind of comes back to this one. So this one's really important. This will cause the supply curve to shift. All right, what else might my company care about? Yeah?
New technology.
Technology, good. So new technology. So an increase in technology, which is kind of weird to think about, but if there's a technological advance, part of the reason it's an advance is that it, to you as a company, lowers the price of you combining the resources together. So it kind of dovetails into that in a way, but it's a new technology that allows you to supply more at each price. A shift to the right now, an up arrow. Change in technology. Yes?
Could technology also be that?
How so?
Alright, so let's say you're serving alcohol, right? Using your beer example. Let's say that they make this where every car has to have a breathalyzer. Then that's going to drive down the sales of beer because people are going to be scared to even get near the car.
So what I'm hearing you say is that what's happening in the marketplace with that example, a good example. So if we have a breathalyzer and my consumers are buying less beer because of the technology, their taste or preferences for getting busted probably changed, perhaps. What happens to the demand? Goes to the left, drives down the price, causes me to supply less quantity, but does not shift the curve. Okay? That's the type of thing. You'll work through these with your homework, those sorts of examples. So yeah, that's good. All right, what else we got here? Another big one, number of suppliers. This one you can kind of think of as very similar to the population with the demand curve, the number of consumers. This is the number of suppliers. So if we have 2 more pizza shops open up in Ottawa, right, there's an increase in the supply of pizza. What's the predicted result going to be for the price of a average large pizza? Pepperoni pizza is going to go down, right? They're going to start competing with each other. There'll be an increase in supply because at the old price, at $8 a slice, which or not $8 a pie, which might be an awfully small mini pizza, but if you'll bear with me here, if prices were to remain in the good old days at the old level, but yet there's new competitors such that the supply has shifted to the right, what occurs? This is a little bit, I'm bringing in some of the stuff we just went over. So there's an increase in the suppliers. If prices stay at the old level, $8, the quantity supplied increases, quantity demanded. What is it doing at $8? Did it change? No, at $8, the quantity demanded is $2.40, but the quantity supplied is now something bigger. And what results? A surplus. Yes, I was trying to get kind of how this all works together. So sometimes companies naively come into a market thinking that, well, Ottawa, let me switch to hamburgers just for fun here since it's more in line with $8. Seems like the market price of a hamburger in Ottawa is $8. Geez, Kind Bakery's getting that, Applebee's and other places. Well, I'm going to open up a restaurant and get $8. I ran all my spreadsheets. $8 seems to work. But as you entered the market, if the market was small, there was less people to go around. And you did good your first 3 months, right? Because this is your honeymoon period when everybody wants to try out the new hamburger at the new place and see what's happened. But eventually they're like, oh, should we go to Applebee's or the new place tonight? Oh, Applebee's sounds good. Let's just go there, right? So once that honeymoon period subsides, then we start to say, wow, we got an excess amount of hamburgers. And we need to drop the price. And now we start to see some of the businesses drop the price. Eventually, I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but when we get into looking at markets a little closer, some of those are going to go out of business. Somebody's going to remain, somebody's going to exit. All right? So number of suppliers, an increase in the number of firms. Firms, remember, we kind of use as businesses. An increase in the number of businesses leads to an increase in the supply curve, a shift to the right. All right, the next one is a little different. It's the price of related outputs. The price of related outputs. The price of related outputs. So on the demand curve, we had the price of related goods, and we had peanut butter and jelly, we had tennis balls and tennis rackets, steak and chicken, whatever. Now we have our supply hat on, and it's the price of related outputs. So if you're a farmer and you are doing some wheat here in Kansas, what else could you put in the ground? Corn, okay? Maybe even sneak in some soybeans, depending on where you're at. But you have a choice of what to put in. Now, wheat seems to be kind of the Kansas favorite, but if corn prices go really high, what's going to happen to the supply of wheat? It's going to increase or decrease. Follow the story. I'm a wheat farmer, let's say. Corn prices skyrocket. What happens to the supply of wheat? It goes down, right? Because we're going to have the farmer substituting from wheat production into corn production. Because the price of a related outputs, those two outputs being substitutes, is going to cause me to change my behavior. So there's two categories similar to where there was in the demand curve. So good outputs can be substitutes. So for example, an increase in the price of wheat, follow my own example, the price of corn, an increase in the price of corn leads to a decrease in the supply of wheat. It's very important that you put the right labels down here. How does the supply of corn shift when there's an increase in the price of corn? Increase? I see a few heads shaking. What does it do? Decrease? So let me back up and say that again. So here's the way, this is the way it works for price-related outputs. We're in the wheat market. Corn prices go up. The farmer puts in more corn and less wheat. So my question is, if I was to draw the corn market, when there's an increase in the price of corn, what happens to the supply curve of wheat? Law of supply. So if there's an increase in the price of corn, what happens to the supply of corn? I'm really tricking you, so be careful. I'll just give you that hint. What happens to the supply of corn, the supply curve of corn? When the price of corn goes up, what happens to the supply curve of corn? I hear ups and downs. Both of those are wrong, if that helps you. It stays the same. That's right. It doesn't shift at all, because if we were to draw the wheat market and the corn market, whoops, I'm on a demand curve. If I draw the supply curve for the quantity of wheat, PW and QW, and I draw the price of corn and the quantity of corn and the supply curve of corn, there's the initial status quo. All we know from the problem is that the price of corn is going up from $3 a bushel to $5 a bushel, causing an increase in what? Look at that definition carefully. The quantity supplied. I'm trying to emphasize this big time because you're going to get tricked. And I hate to use that word trick, but doggone it, you're going to get tricked. And that's why I'm trying to tell you the trick, right? I'm not a magician up here. I'm not trying to, well, we don't reveal our secrets. I'm revealing it to you. It's there. Learn it. Know it. The difference between quantity supplied and supply. So here, an increase in the price leads to an increase in the quantity supplied of corn. That farmer does indeed put corn in the field this year rather than wheat. And over in the wheat market, they have chosen, because wheat prices stayed constant in my example. Anybody got wheat prices per bushel? Any farmers in here? I really don't know, so ballpark works. I don't know if it's $4 or $8 or $10, honestly. Soybeans are up around 10, 12, I think.
Let's go
5 work? All right, I don't hear any objections. We'll go with 5. So at $5, the farmers used to want to do this much wheat, but now they want to do this much, right? They've decreased the supply. All right, so that's substitutes. Questions there? So hang on these words here. What you might want to do to yourself is when you see the up S, this is the supply curve. I'm not always good at remembering to say the whole thing. I start to do kind of shortcuts, so that's an increase in supply. But that is always different than this, the quantity supply. Okay? All right, complements. So if we are a honey maker, we might end up getting beeswax and honey. if honey prices go up, what happens to the supply of beeswax? I know you guys might not all be into honey and beeswax, nor am I, except for this example that I've been using for 20 years. I've learned a little bit more by going to the state fair and seeing the whole process done. But so, what's the connection between beeswax and honey? First of all, let's think about the physical thing that goes on.
You harvest less of it.
You harvest less of it. So if you harvest more honey, you get less beeswax?
Right.
No. So the beeswax is that honeycomb thing. This is the little bit that I know of it, right? So in order to get honey, you're left over with beeswax. So the two are produced jointly together. It's kind of a joint production process, right? And so if you are a producer, you get this as a byproduct of making honey. And of course, this has a little bit of market value too, just not as good as honey. So if honey prices go up, the supply of beeswax also goes up, kind of as a byproduct of it. Okay? Oh, thank you. I'm getting a little stuck here today, aren't you? Come on, come on. All right. So, let's see here. So an increase in the price of honey will cause honey producers, kind of back up to this wheat example, right? If this was honey here, honey producers are going to produce more, which is now going to give them more beeswax. So it's going to lead to an increase in the supply of beeswax. All right, so that's our price of related outputs. And then our last one here is expectations. Expectations. So if there's an increase in the expected price of honey, which I will note, I can't remember if we did this last time, this, when I raise the price to the superscript E, that's one way of showing the expected price. So the expected future price of honey is going up. Am I going to supply more today if I'm a supplier or less? Less, because I want to supply more tomorrow. So I'll just hold on to it, right? So in terms of today, if the future price of honey is going up, today I'm going to decrease the supply of honey. And now you could put today if you want. The supply curve today falls down. They're going to hold, they're not going to bring that to market. They're just going to hold on to it. All right. So let's see. Let's do one example here. We've done kind of multiple examples as we went through, but let's do one example. Let's see. Ebola's kind of in the news. Who knows what's going on with Ebola? I don't need all the nitty-gritty details because I'm just going to make up kind of an example. But what is Ebola? Is it something that helps you? Again, I'm not looking for a medical definition, but I just want to make sure when I motivate this example here that you guys are all on the same page. What's Ebola? A virus, and what does it do to you? It kills you, yes. And so it's very dangerous. Where is the outbreak occurring? In West Africa, okay? So let's look at maybe some tourism. Oops, over to West Africa. Suppose there is an Ebola outbreak in Africa. I'll just shorten this here. Suppose there's an Ebola outbreak in Africa, What do you predict will happen to the quantity of hotel room sales? It's kind of the tourism market. Be sure to show the effect on price and quantity using supply and demand. All right, there. Go ahead and work on it. You can work with your neighbor if you want. I'm going to come around and look at your papers, and I want to see what you come up with. There's your short answer problem. Oh, this guy's getting stuck over here. I must come in the right turn, I suppose. Yep, just kind of show using supply and demand. That's exactly how a quiz question or a homework question could look, and then you have to take it from there. No more training wheels of me just giving you the supply curve and demand curve. Answer the problem using supply and demand. But feel free to work with your neighbors if you want.
We also need to do that room supplied by the airport store.
I want you to answer it to the best of your abilities right now, without any more tips. Make all the assumptions you need to. Okay, so I see lots of different approaches as I walk around the room. Some fairly blank pages, some people starting to write. I'm going to give you your first tip of how you should start off every problem like this. Every single one should start with what I call home base. Home base. No matter what the problem is, start with home base. So if this is a multiple choice problem on an exam, you might just draw it in the margin to help you solve the problem. Home base looks like this. Price, quantity, upward sloping supply, downward sloping demand. The intersection of the two gives you an initial price and an initial equilibrium quantity. That is home base. You can apply that to anything, whether we're talking about hotels, pizza, beer, wheat, corn. That is home base for supply and demand. What it's stating is that there's some initial status quo that gets shocked with an event. What's the shock up here? The Ebola. Now take your home base and manipulate it according to the shock that occurred. And now don't forget your labels either. So you need to label what Q is and what P is. But start with home base. And again, you don't have to be fussy with numbers because we don't have any. So we're going to be talking a little more in general terms. So numbers as a variable, yes, in terms of price, but we don't have actual numbers like you will in maybe some other problems. What's that?
That's what we wanted to say. You have a hotel room in Africa, right?
Yes. Yep. So that is hotel rooms in Africa. Somebody just asked. So yeah. Suppose there's an Ebola outbreak in Africa. I was thinking about hotel rooms and
Yeah, so I said it would go down.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to stay in a room and affect it with a board.
Now, should there be potential for the sales rooms going up to the right crossing or not? Or somebody else would...
go ahead and make your assumptions and do your model. Summer?
We were thinking like how you said the boiler was a thought. We were thinking like the supply would shift left because hotels might close.
Okay.
Just 'cause I don't know if that was.
All right. Well, you're on the right line of thinking. Well, once you got, I want everybody to kind of work through their answer. A lot of you have the right gut feelings, but you'll find that your gut will mislead you in terms of doing the economic model if you don't have the right, if you don't follow the right steps.
Dr. McCullough.
And that can lead you to the wrong predictions too. All right. Yeah, make sure you identify price and quantity. Remember, that's what the question asked here, was to look at what is the effect on price and quantity using supply and demand. Okay. So, now if I don't ask you to graph it, if it's like a multiple choice problem, we'd say what's the price, what's the effect on price and quantity. So what do you guys have for answers? Let me just hear, go ahead and give me some of your answers you came up with. Price. So you got it going this direction, down and down. Okay?
I said the price would go down and quantity.
Price down, quantity up. Others? Yeah.
Supply curve stays the same, but the demand curve moves a lot.
Okay, and what's the impact on price and quantity though? So I do want to, so these are the type of answers with the way this one's worded is what is the price? So imagine this being a multiple choice problem where your choices are this one, A, B, C, or D. So go ahead, what did you come up with?
It was the second one, the price decreases, or actually the price decreases, quantity stays the same.
Quantity stays the same. Okay, decrease price, quantity same. Okay, other ones. All right, so let's see how to put this down. So first thing we got to do is label our market. It's the supply and demand of what? Hotel rooms, right? So we're looking at kind of the amount of hotel rooms. All right. And what happens? Yep.
I got
Another question
well, another guess.
or comment? Another guess. Okay.
The price goes down, but the quantity demand goes down, but the quantity total doesn't change.
And no change quantity total.
So the equilibrium point just moves straight down. It doesn't move to the left at all.
All right. Okay. Any other ones? Same thing? Okay, so you guys, anybody else in a different camp other than these four camps? All right, so now we go back to the model. What happens in the model here? Ebola outbreak.
The
Demand goes down. Why? Anytime we shift demand, you guys should be going back to your shifter list, and it's got to be one of those reasons. Why'd it go down?
Because nobody wants to be in the same.
Okay, nobody wants to be over there. So what of our shifter list, though? I want you to be very specific going to the shifters. Taste or preferences. All right, some expectations about maybe getting our disease. We can maybe play into that. But it's changed our preferences for the desirability of this place. And so the demand curve shifts to the left. So another thing that we haven't done too much yet is go D1 and D2, because if you're using black and white instead of colors like I try to do, then you might not know which is which. So when you label these things, make sure you put like D1 or D2 or some sort of marking. Sometimes I'll just put a prime or double prime or something. All right, so price goes down. We've got a new equilibrium price. And this seems to support this one, right? So what happens next? Supply. What happens to supply? It goes to the right. So we're going to increase the number of suppliers. No, so not to the right. Is it going to go to the left? Because price is going down. Law of supply. It stays the same. Good. I must have hammered that into you. I usually get a few people that are wanting to get what I call shift happy. Don't get shift happy with the curves. So some of you might be saying, well, yeah, don't you know anything? The supply curve's got to go down because, geez, there's nobody around, you know, and prices are low. But that's the wrong interpretation of quantity supplied. The suppliers did react to this by reducing the quantity that they're supplying, right? Because equilibrium fell. So they reduced the number being supplied to the market to here. So this is our done. No more shifting, no more demands. So one of the hints to doing these is that as you read a problem, you'll typically only have one curve shifting if there's only one event or shock to the system. So one shock, one shift. So let's put that little note down. So note. Usually, I don't want you guys to sue me. There might be some extreme cases, but for most of these problems, usually one shock or event leads to one shift of a curve, either supply or demand. Don't get shift happy. Don't get shift happy. All right, so
Another one. Would the supply line change if, let's say, the whole staff was wiped out by Ebola?
so yeah, I was gonna what was your story that you were telling besides the staff being wiped out? You said something else, I thought, when I was walking around. You were weaving an extra thing into the story.
Oh, the Red Cross.
The Red Cross, yeah. What did you say about that?
What if they needed a place to stay with these hotels?
Okay, so example number 2. Suppose, now notice how I put example number 2. I kind of want to make this distinct. Suppose Ebola, ... and an increase in wages of hotel workers due to many deaths of, now this is getting a little bit morbid for an example, but you brought it up, not me. Many deaths of employees. So you got what I'm saying here? So we got the whole Ebola thing, and I'm giving you an extra shock here, and an unrelated, well, in this case it's kind of related, but another effect that's directly affecting the hotels we're going to leave your red cross thing alone because I wanted to get into the supply is the reason. What happens now to our model? Supply curve changes. In which direction does it go? Left or right? To the left, right? Increase in the price of resources. Now, what is your prediction on price and quantity? Price decreases. Quantity now goes up.
Oh, if they're paying the, yeah.
Price increases. Now, one thing I didn't say is that I don't want to think of this happening as this one happens first and then this one. When you have a problem like this and it's and, they're both happening simultaneously. Okay, so I'm not going from this point is what I want to avoid. So one thing that I want you to do, to go back to home base again, is to draw a big fat star here at the original spot. That's going to be kind of an anchoring spot for us for this problem. Is price going to go up or down compared to where we started, P1? Decrease? Increase? Stay the same? I haven't heard the right answer yet, and I've heard increase, decrease, and stay the same, but yet I haven't heard the right answer. Imagine that. Who's clever with that? Sounds like a little riddle almost, doesn't it? Jeff?
If both are happening
Yeah.
at the same time, then are we shifting the demand line and the supply line?
Yes.
So then your price is still gonna decrease
Okay, price is going to fall below P1.
below P1.
Okay, I've heard other people say that too. But I told you I've heard people say price is going to increase, price is going to decrease, or price is going to stay the same, and yet I haven't heard the right answer. What's going to happen to price? We don't know. That's right. Answer number 4. We don't know. What does that depend on? Whether this ends up going above P1, stay the same, or drop below P1? What does it depend on? The shift, the magnitudes of the shifts. That's right. So now, when I get a problem like this, you might not want to muddy up. In fact, since I'm telling you, you might not want to muddy it up. Let me start here. When I get a problem like this, go to home base. And we've got 2 curves shifting. Home base is, hopefully you guys will get home base cranked out like nothing here pretty soon. We're going to go to home base a lot. I had a decrease in demand, a shift to the right, but was it there? 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 I don't know. And I had a decrease in supply, a shift to the left. So maybe it was there. But do I know that for sure? No, it could have been there, 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 there. And what all of a sudden pops out at you? We could be anywhere, but what about quantity? Stays the same? If we know that for sure supply decreased and demand decreased, quantity decreases. Quantity demanded, but what about equilibrium price or quantity? It also goes down. All of these represent new possible equilibrium points. Every single intersection, if you look at it, if I draw a big fat orange curve here, just that's why I drew the star. Every single intersection point lies to the left of the quantity. So what we can claim with this problem when we're asked what happens to price and quantity is that quantity will for sure fall, but we are unsure about what's going to happen to price because it depends on the magnitude or the size of each shift.
And is that quantity of total or quantity?
Hold on one sec. What was yours?
Is that quantity of total or quantity of demand?
That is the equilibrium quantity. So we're looking at both the quantity, the new resting point, the new equilibrium. What was the other question back there? Yeah, we would just, yes, if both of these things are going on, we're not sure if hotel room prices, which one's going to win out, so to speak, on which effect is bigger, given the information that we have here. Okay, did I see another hand up, Todd?
I mean, I was thinking like if people are in the hospital with Ebola, aren't families gonna come in?
Possibly, but we don't want to read more into the story than what we got. So that was something that you guys were doing, and that I don't. Another maybe thing I should write up here is memorize your shifters. Know that what happens is what happens. The real world is very chaotic. I mean, you could weave 100,000 stories of what goes on, right? Your mind just starts to race naturally. What I'm trying to do is to control those thoughts, not in an evil, diabolical way, but I'm trying to get you to manage your thoughts in a framework. That's what the economic way of thinking is to say, okay, let's rationally think through this. If this happens holding these things constant, this will be the result. And you're done. That's the whole point of the prediction. Now, if you're wrong, which economists are all the time, by the way, with their predictions, then we look at why they were wrong based on that assumption. We must have screwed up holding something constant. Something else popped into the equation, right? If we believe in what we're doing with these predictions. So that's kind of setting up the whole hypothesis test of figuring out what's going on in this crazy world. All right, so let's see, what was I going to do? Oh, the answer, first of all, with two curves shifting. So, answer. There will be a decrease in equilibrium quantity, and we will be unsure or uncertain about P star. It depends on the magnitude, the size of shifts in each curve. Key point. Whenever two curves shift, you will always be sure about one thing and unsure about the other. So a key point to generalization here. Sorry, actually this thing's kind of down anyway, and since I'm kind of crowding this way, I don't know how much that's going to help you.